Welcome to another episode of People Always Ask. This episode, we are talking about how to use movement to reduce and release anxiety in your body. Emotions are all body-based, and anxiety in particular invites movement. And so a lot of people ask, how can you use your body to release or cope with anxiety? And there are great techniques that I love. So I have put on my sweats and my dancing gear for you today so that we can talk about how to use your body to reduce your anxiety. Now, last week we talked about it a little bit. And so let's review the couple of things that came up in our last episode about movement and how to help you reduce your anxiety. So the first thing is syncopated movement. And I mean drumming, and I mean walking, and I mean clapping and moving back and forth. This rhythmic movement, for some reason, that is the easiest, most primary thing our body has access to help us reduce anxiety. So the first easy way to help you reduce anxiety is, of course, rhythmic movement. Now, like we talked about last week, the other thing that helps us reduce anxiety of course, is aerobic activity. And so you don't actually have to do much. Sometimes when I want to get my heart going really quickly, I'll do a couple of burpees. For those of you who don't know what those are, that means that I will jump up into the air and go down onto the floor doing a push-up, stand back up, and then do that a few times. Now, you can also just run in place, get your heart rate going. You can do some jumping jacks, but you can just dance around and do whatever. Now, it doesn't matter what you do. What's important is that you can feel that your heart rate gets up. And so this, for most people, means that it's going up at least 80 beats per minute, and that's going to get our dopamine and serotonin levels raised and also reduce and release our anxiety. So those are the most basic human ways that we kind of go about using movement to address and release anxiety. As we also talked about, aerobic activity is healthy for a lot of other reasons, and it doesn't need to be that rigorous. So when we're talking about using aerobic activity, your breath might be up a little, your heart may be up a little, but just like I'm doing with you, you should be able to talk and it still actually serves the purpose. It does not have to be intense, rigorous, relentless exercise. You can do it for 10 to 15 minutes and that should help you reduce your anxiety all by itself. It does not have to be intense. It just has to get your heart rate above 80 beats per minute. So let's talk about a second technique where we can start to use our body to release anxiety. Now, this is a particularly good technique for teaching our bodies to let go. Some of us have struggles with holding on to tension, holding on to anxiety, and it very much lives in tension in our body. You can tell by tension in your shoulders, you can tell by tension in your stomach and indigestion that comes from not feeling relaxed in your body. And so this second technique, we're going to talk about one portion of something that's larger first. And the portion we're going to talk about first, you can do with or without this second part. It's called tense and release. And I mean, some people might call it clench, some people might call it, rigid, stiff body, loose body, but the basic goal is to pick any muscle group in your body and to purposefully put as much tension into it as you possibly can and then release. Now, I'm a fan of learning through doing. So first, let's try it out. Let's use your fist. This is a place where a lot of tension can come up for a lot of us. And I want you to just while we're doing this. Think of something that bothers you, irritates you, nothing too traumatic. It could be any day, regular, aggravating stuff or irritating stuff. It doesn't have to be anything big. And we're going to use that tension that you feel when thinking about that irritating or dysregulating thing. And we're just going to inhale and tighten our fists. And so as you're tightening and as you're inhaling, you're noticing your nails into your fists. You're noticing the tension of the muscle groups. You can keep your fists down on your lap. You do not have to have them up like this, but just tense. And now on the release, and you can take more than one breath as you're tensing. You can tense more than once, so just make sure that you've got those muscles engaged in your fist. And then we're thinking of that irritating thing, and all at once we are releasing on our exhale, wiggling our fingers, releasing our shoulder, and just letting that tension out of our hands. And so you can do this with your fist. I recommend doing it 5 times. And just releasing and letting your body introduce that feeling of letting go. Now, metaphorically and literally, those of us who struggle to let go of things, of emotions, of situations, we tend to hold tension in our body. And so an effect of my personal trauma, of a lot of people's trauma, is what they call hypervigilance, which often comes with a posture that has a lot of tension in our shoulders, a lot of tension in our back, because we are prepping, we are searching, we are readying for something. We don't even know what, but our bodies know the story of needing to be vigilant. So the other place that's nice to practice this is where this naturally might come up for a lot of us. This is in our shoulders, right? We have tension that comes up here in our shoulders and in our neck. And so for this, all you're going to do is you're going to notice, and you can include some head movement if it helps, is you're going to notice where the tension is naturally. And you're just going to squeeze up again as tight as you can, engaging those muscle groups. For some people, they might be able to hold this for a long time. For other people, they won't. It'll get really uncomfortable very quickly. And so you're inhaling into the tension and releasing with everything in you as you release down your shoulders and your neck. And if you want to, because tension is actually a precursor for movement, you can release and let that go all the way into a stretch, which might be the natural ending of that movement, which I think is always great. So you tense, you release that tension, and just let it go into the natural movement that feels right for you to experience that release, to experience that letting go. And so that tense and release, that tension, and then letting the natural movement flow afterwards. That is a nice practice for us to be able to literally feel things and intentionally release them, intentionally let them go. Now, for our next technique, we're just going to use that exact same formula of tensing on our inhale and sort of isolating a muscle group and releasing, except for this technique, which is called progressive muscle relaxation. We're going to start at the top of our bodies, at our scalps and the top of our head, intentionally tensing up, tightening our temples, feeling our head and our jaw, face tighten, and releasing everything down, shaking out our jaws, shaking out our head, shaking out our neck. And progressive muscle relaxation, we are going to tense and release, tense and release, all the way down our body. And so for each body part in a progressive relaxation, we usually go between 3 and 5 tense and release cycles. So we would go our forehead, tense and release, tense and release. 5 times, our cheeks and our mouth and our jaw. 3 to 5 times, and then we would do the same for our shoulders, and then we would do the same for our arms. We'd do the same for our torso, clenching and tightening that core, even so far as to tense like this, leaning into yourself, curling in the middle, and then releasing those muscles so they're flat and so they have space to stretch out and to breathe. And then you go down your body all the way down to the base and the heels of your feet, right? Because we experience tension all the way down to the balls and the toes in the feet. And so progressive relaxation, we go through and we tense and we release, and we tense and we release. And as always, at the end of any activity where you're hoping to regulate your body more, we stop and we notice. We notice the body, we notice the heart, we notice the sensations that are coming up on the inside. We notice the sensations of the 5 senses, the sight, the sounds, the visuals, the taste, the smell, so that we can experience what our body feels like after we have intentionally engaged it in some type of moving or healing process. And so we stop after our progressive relaxation and we notice. Now, the next technique is actually based in a principle from Tai Chi. So Tai Chi is a martial art which is based in the idea on moving energy. So this is called painting light. It's actually pretty similar to what we were just discussing in our last technique with progressive relaxation around breathing. And so in this, we are actually going to visualize that our hands are like paintbrushes. Okay, so just imagine that your fingers are like the brushes. And out of the end, you are actually painting with glowing light. That you are painting with energy and glowing light. And that is the energy that we are going to use in this activity, which is called painting light. So first, get into a nice, natural, tall, standing, comfortable stance. And keep your eyes straight ahead. Now, if it helps you, you can close your eyes, but at no time during any of these activities should you feel obligated to close your eyes. It can be triggering for some, although for others, it can help them focus. So, eyes closed, eyes open, up to you. But now when we're doing painting light, we can start with a slight bend in the knees. And you absolutely don't have to if your knees are saying, girl, not today, sir, not today. We don't have it in us to do a slight bend. You can keep your legs nice and straight like this, spine nice and loose and limber like this, and we can do it without the knee bend. But some of us will start in a deeper knee bend if that's comfortable, some only a slight one, whatever works. You place your hands starting at the bottom, starting on your knees or upper thighs if you're standing. And we're going to inhale, painting the light. And you can just bring it up to here if that's all you can manage. And if you are physically able, you can bring your arms even higher and inhale all the way above your head. And just as we released before, we are going to take the light. And if you want to follow it with your eyes so you can see the energy even more, you exhale, bending back down, touching your knees. And so let's just try that a few times together. It's painting the light up and inhaling. If you are physically able, exhaling, placing the hands back down and inhaling, straightening our body, painting the light, watching it with our fingers if we can. Exhaling, bending back down onto the knees. And again, we have ourselves inhaling and straightening, and then exhaling and using the exhale to release. Now, after all of the movements, 5 rounds, 10 rounds, whatever feels right for you, once again, we're going to stop. We are going to notice our bodies, notice our heart, notice the texture of the feelings in our body, the colors of what's coming up in our body, the internal experience. And then also notice the external experience, the temperature in the room, the sounds, the colors around you, the physical feeling of being supported by whatever is holding you up. This next technique that we're going to get into is called a butterfly tap. Now, this is actually something that primates and babies tend to typically do naturally to self-soothe. And so when we're thinking of a butterfly tap, something that's used often as a calming technique in what I do, which is EMDR, they teach it almost universally so that people can have a resource to calm down when they're triggered by trauma. This is a simple technique where all you're doing is hugging yourself, arms crossed over the chest, and slowly tapping. If it helps, you can close the eyes. Breathing in all the way to the belly as we do this. Unless that triggers you, and then just breathing naturally and normally. While exhaling the tension and the feeling. This slow, gentle tap, which mimics a slight rock that children might naturally receive from a parent or a caregiver. This is also something that primates naturally do to calm themselves down. Find the pressure, find the pace that's soothing for you. And that is the right butterfly tap for you. And so our nice butterfly tap is always here if needed for self-soothing. Similarly, if you'd want to, you can slowly tap on the legs. And it tends to similarly work. Tapping, butterfly tapping, anxiety tapping, which you can look up, all of those for some reason have a way of calming and soothing the body with their rhythm. And so butterfly taps are used for self-soothing, but you can also use them when holding someone else. And so they are very useful in anxiety-provoking situations and for all sorts of really intense trauma reactions that feel like they're out of control. They help to soothe and regulate the body. Simple. So let's move on to a thing that we all know and love. Dancing. Now, there's a lot of different ways to incorporate dancing into relieving anxiety. So let's break this down into 3 separate parts. So that way we can talk about dancing as a movement-based coping technique and not just a general thing. Because obviously dancing is awesome, but there's a lot of different ways that you can go about using your body and dancing and movement and music to help you relieve anxiety, and they're not all the same. So let's start with the most basic of basic, which is that you are listening to something that you enjoy. So there is mindful listening and there's mindful movement. Now, in mindful movement, what we're asking you to do is to go inside of your body and to sense your energy. Now, hopefully you got some music you can put on right now so you can practice this with me. But since I can't put music that's not royalty free, we're not going to be playing any of the biggest hits right here on this episode. But what we will be doing is to at least show you a little bit of how you could do it given the royalty-free beats that is about to play in the background. So the first technique that we have is about mindful movement, and it's about learning to follow your energy. Now, a lot of times we do not trust ourselves, we do not trust our intuition, we do not trust our energy, and we start to disconnect. So a lot of us are like walking around thinking beings, overly involved in our thoughts without really being engaged with our body. And so dancing can be an interesting space to safely start to feel what it's like to follow your energy. And so if we imagine that you're all by yourself, and hopefully you are, let's practice. So something's gonna come on, and rather than just dancing because you're looking at yourself in the mirror, dancing for the performance, which by the way will release dopamine too, so don't you worry. You can also perform and dance in front of that mirror, and we're still good in terms of starting to relieve and release some anxiety. But for this first technique that we're talking about with mindful movement, what we're looking for is the energy that comes before the movement, following that embodied energy. So if you want to move forward, we're almost noticing the pull to move forward first and then moving. And if you want to move to the side, we're noticing the energy that tells us to move to the side first, and then we're moving to the side. And if we want to roll our neck, or if we want to swing our arm, we're noticing the energy that tells us this is where I want to go next. And we just move and move without thought, without self-consciousness about what it might be or look like. There is no right way. If you're feeling tension, remember we said tension is a precursor to movement. So here, you might even want to check in to parts of your body that are aching and ask yourself, what is the natural movement that might come from this part of my body if I allow it to move me? If I allow this music to move me, what will be the natural outcome? What will it look like? What will it feel like? And it might be difficult, right? It might be unattractive. It might not be pretty. It may just look wild. But this is about freedom of movement. This is about learning to let go of the thinking before the moving. So that first technique that we're talking about is simply following that energy that you've got and trying to see what it's like to trust yourself, to move first, feel first, and not go from the top down. That can release any energy that's pent up in your body, any energy that's been pent up in your muscles, and tension that hasn't been fully released, right? And sometimes tension can make us want to hit. Sometimes tension can make us want to hold ourselves, but we're just looking mindfully at what the movement is asking of us, where we just follow it without thinking, we just flow with our energy. That is the space that people refer to as flow for dancers, where there's not thinking, they're simply moving and moving into the next movement based on familiarity and this other type of knowing that most of us don't develop so well in our body, where we know what we're about to do without having to be thinking about it. And so that's technique number one when it comes to dancing. Now, if that feels a little too free-flowing for you, that's fine. There's also a technique called noodling. And this was created by a man who's a dancer and an actor. I really love it. The good thing is you don't have to be a professional dancer or actor or performer to noodle, but it is what it sounds like. If you could imagine a wet noodle hanging in front of you, the goal of noodling is to let us regain fluidity in our body and let go of rigid, tense, immobile ways of being. So if we are too rigid in our bodies, if the tension is getting too intense in our bodies, this is designed to literally teach us to go from rigid to fluid, to go from stiff to loose. So when we're looking at this technique, all we're thinking is if my body was a loose noodle, and now this doesn't have to be the loosest of noodles. This noodle might be just a little loose. This noodle might be very loose. It depends on what your body is comfortable with. But just imagine that each limb of yours is actually becoming fluid and loose, like a noodle. And now you can do this for however long you want to. But the point really is to notice the tension that might be there and try to intentionally let it go and be looser, right? So noodling is gonna look something like letting your body move loosely, letting yourself feel fluid without thought about what it looks like. We're really just trying our best to explore the idea of fluid movement, fluid as if we don't have bones, right? And so a lot of that is gonna look a little bit like breakdancing, right? We have those wavy movements in there. But when we're doing the noodling, right, again, this is releasing rigid and tense and starting to get more into loose fluid. All right, now you can dance to anything you want like that. You can use noodles. You can make just your leg a noodle if you want to. You can make your middle all a noodle. And like I said, your noodle could be a little rigid. It doesn't have to be that loose noodle. Whatever works for you, but the goal is to get that rigidity out and fluidity in like a noodle. So that's the second dancing technique, is noodling. Now, last but not least, something very interesting is true. Synchronizing your movements with someone else makes us feel more relaxed. And so I don't have anything that I can show you on that per se, but what you could do is you could take a dance class. You could mimic movements, right? And so even something simple like learning those little TikTok dances that folks be doing definitely can actually help reduce your anxiety levels. So don't down the dance routines and the little, 30-second clips, because it's actually proven to reduce anxiety. And so, that was a lot, but let's go through it quickly from the top. So let's review. First, we had an oldie but a goodie, aerobic exercise. Just getting your heart above 80 beats per minute doesn't have to be that crazy. You can still even be talking. Just get your heart rate up. Technique number 2, tensing and releasing. Now, tensing and releasing, you can do it in any muscle group in your body. And when we do it from our head all the way down to our toes, 3 to 5 times for each muscle group, then we call it progressive relaxation. Progressive relaxation is a proven technique, helps you go to sleep, helps you relax, helps you release that tension that sometimes can get caught in our bodies. Now, third technique, we have the painting light from Tai Chi practice. And that is a simple inhale on our hands up, painting like a beautiful brush with light up and just exhaling on our way down, bending our knees back. And then we have our butterfly tap, our simple technique of just simply hugging across the chest, slow tapping, just like our primate ancestors did, if you believe in that evolution, and just like babies get rocked back and forth oftentimes by their mother. A butterfly tap is for our nice self-soothing. Then we have dancing. And within dancing, we talked about following your energy with mindful movement, not thinking about it, no mirrors, no choreography, simple moving based on what feels right in your body. Learn to trust your intuition. And then we have this specific technique of moving our body called noodling, where we really let go, we really get loose, and we get from rigid to fluid in our body. Finally, we have synchronizing movement, moving with somebody else in the same way at the same time. Research shows even if you watch a video of somebody doing something and you imitate them, that you are getting the benefits and reducing anxiety that way too. So dance classes, choreography, TikToks, whatever works for you, that is the final way that you might be able to use dancing to release anxiety. And now, as we come to the culmination of our movement episode, we are going to do something that I used to do before every theater performance, which is just shake our body out. And so we've got shake, 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 shake. There is something called sevens that we used to do, and we would do 7 of these and then count down and do 6 of these and then count down, and I'm just shaking my feet, and then afterwards you just shake it out and get that energy out. And so, as always, after we are done, we take a nice breath into our heart, and it doesn't have to be particularly deep, as comfortable and as natural as you want. And we just check back in, we just see how our bodies are doing. Card that we get today for the tarot pick of the day, with our Afro Goddess Arcanist Tarot deck, is the 5 of Cups. You want to look at her carefully there. What you can see is a woman crying over spilled cups standing in front of her. And behind her, she still has 2 full cups. And of course, this card is in reverse. So we're getting a different meaning than its upright meaning. So this card, the 5 of Cups in reverse, it can point to those who are suffering, the most intense suffering, but in a private way. You have not released pain surrounding a situation that's creating even more pain. At this point, you're the one holding you back. Simply put, it's time to get over it so you can heal. And one of the wonderful things about using your body to release energy, to release tension, is we can explore feeling and release simply through our bodies and the sensations that come up. So if for some reason you are suffering in a private way and it's showing up as pain in your body, tension in your body, discomfort, dysregulation in your body, try to remember some of the movement-based techniques we had today. To release, to soothe, to explore, following your intuition and the feeling and the energy in your body, to relax, to release. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Tension is a precursor to movement. Find out if you're tensing up what it is that you are holding on to that might actually be causing you pain and suffering. As always, our takeaway is poignant Do not suffer unnecessarily. Release the pain, release the tension in your body. Those of us with anxiety are much more prone to chronic illness and chronic pain issues, primarily digestive, sleep, and back issues. So if you've already started to get those, then you already know what I mean. So let's listen to the ancestors and always remember to take care of you. Please join us next time for the season finale of People Always Ask. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you got something out of today. Enjoy your day and go ahead, move your body, release your tension if you're able, and let that anxiety go. See you next time on People Always Ask.